What is identity? Well, identity is a collection of user information, rights, credentials, group memberships, and roles. When you put all these things together, they create a set of claims about an individual or an account holder, and these claims are made by one party to another party. So for example, if I come to your front door and knock on your door at your house, you might say, "Who are you?" And I'll say, "Well, I'm Jason." That's a claim about my identity. Now, do you have a way to prove that I am Jason? Or do I have a way to prove that I'm Jason? Well, that's what we're going to talk about in this lesson. Because when you talk about identity, it is a key part of authentication, authorization, and trust. So there are many different attributes to identity. There's your name, your address, the title you hold at work, your contact information like your phone number or email address, even identification numbers like your social security number or passport numbers. All of these things can make up your identity. And what information makes up your identity is going to be determined by your information system and your identity management system. Now, when we start talking about these attributes, they all can be populated into a centralized database. And this database is called a directory. It can be used for authentication purposes. For example, if I show up to your door and say, "I'm Jason," you may say, "Prove it." And I can pull up my driver's license and show you that as a method to prove that I am Jason, right? Or if I go up to the border agent in the London airport at Heathrow, they might say, "Hey, prove that you are who you say you are." I'll pull out my passport, show them that my name is Jason Dion, here's my passport, here's where I was born, here's what country I'm from, and they can then know that I am who I say I am. Now, when we talk about identity, it really comes down to the 3 A's. And identity is really the basis of this. There's authentication, authorization, and accounting. These 3 A's are used to control access to computers, networks, and different services that you may want to use as a user. These AAA systems, as they're known, can use usernames, passwords, or any other attribute of an identity to authorize access. For instance, one of my attributes is my thumbprint, right? One of my attributes is the color of my eyes. One of these might be my place of birth. All of these things could be used, but the most common one that you see is username and password. Now, when we talk about the 3 A's, you have to understand what the definitions are. Authentication. Authentication is an individual proving who they are. So in my example before, I use my passport to show that I am Jason Dion. Authorization. This is giving the individual is being provided access to a given resource. So in the case of my airport example, I show that I'm Jason with my passport, and the City of London will let me exit the airport and enter their city because I've crossed the border, right? They've authorized me. And then the third thing is accounting. Now, when I go through security and I go through customs, they're going to keep a log of everybody who enters and exits the UK or London airport, right? This is a log, and these logs and monitors are used for any user that comes through. In my case, a traveler, right? And when these people come through and they've been authenticated or they've been authorized, that can be logged as a successful entry. But if I tried to get in and I showed them somebody else's passport, they may deny me entrance, and they would log that as well, right? Because you can log all the attempts that were made, all the successful ones, and all the unsuccessful ones. So that's the basis of AAA and the basis of identity systems. Now, these identity systems can be on each individual machine. For example, on your laptop that you're watching this on, you have a username and password, but it's probably not connected to a domain unless you're at work. So in your case, it's a central database on your laptop only that gives you authentication to get onto your laptop using your name and password. Now, if you go to your work, there's probably a domain controller that centralizes this IAM, Identity and Access Management. And everybody has their own username and password that can log onto any computer in the office that ties into that domain. These systems are built to create, store, and manage identity information. This can include your group memberships, your roles, your permissions, and all of those identity attributes that we talked about before. Remember, each individual has multiple identity attributes, and each entity, like an organization, can have multiple identities underneath it. Now, what does IAM do for us? Well, this Identity Access Management System can do a lot of things. It can provision accounts after you've created them and give them certain rights and accesses. It can do the authentication for us so we can log on to the systems. It can do single sign-on and use that same credential and identification across multiple systems. It can feed into the directory, like in our email directory, it would give us our emails, our phone numbers, our titles, our names. All that comes from that LDAP directory. It can do account maintenance. It can do reporting and monitoring and logging and auditing. All of these things can be handled by the Identity and Access Management System. So it's important for us to secure these properly because they are a big target for attackers.